My name is Erin Harris. I'm from Pope John Paul the Great Catholic High School, senior, and I'm reading chapter 30 of the Pickwick Papers whenever Mr. Weller had just fallen while ice skating with Mr. Pickwickian. With a violent effort, Mr. Weller disengaged himself from the grasp of the agonized Pickwickian and, in doing so, administered a considerable impetus to the unhappy Mr. Winkle. With an accuracy which no degree of dexterity or practice could have ensured, the unfortunate gentleman bore swiftly down into the center of the reel at the very moment when Mr. Bob Sawyer was performing a flourish of unparalleled beauty. Mr. Winkle struck wildly against him, and with a loud crash they both fell heavily down. Mr. Pickwick ran to the spot. Bob Sawyer had risen to his feet, but Mr. Winkle was far too wise to do anything of the kind, in skates, of course. He was seated on the ice, making spasmodic efforts to smile, but the anguish was depicted on every lineament of his countenance. "Are you hurt?" inquired Mr. Benjamin Allen, with great anxiety. "Not much," said Mr. Winkle, rubbing his back very hard. "I wish you'd let me bleed you," said Mr. Benjamin, with great eagerness. No, thank you," replied Mr. Winkle hurriedly. "I really think you had better," said Mr. Allen. "Thank you," replied Mr. Winkle, "but I'd rather not." "What do you think, Mr. Pickwick?" inquired Bob Sawyer. Mr. Pickwick was excited and indignant. He beckoned to Mr. Weller and said in a stern voice, "Take his skates off." "No, but I really had scarcely begun," remonstrated Mr. Winkle. "Take his skates off," repeated Mr. Pickwick firmly. The command was not to be resisted. Mr. Winkle allowed Sam to obey in silence. "Lift him up," said Mr. Pickwick. Sam assisted him to rise. Mr. Pickwick retired a few paces apart from the bystanders and, beckoning with his friend to approach, fixed a searching upon him, and uttered in a low but distinct and emphatic tone those remarkable words. "You're a humbug, sir." "A what?" said Mr. Winkle, starting. "A humbug, sir. I will speak plainer if you wish, an impostor, sir." With those words, Mr. Pickwick slowly turned on his heel and rejoined with his friends. While Mr. Pickwick was delivering himself on the sentiment just reported, Mr. Weller and the fat boy, having their joint endeavors cut aside out, were exercising themselves thereupon in a very masterly and brilliant manner. Sam Weller, in particular, was displaying that beautiful feat of fancy sliding which is currently denominated knocking at the cobbler's door, and which is achieved by skimming over the ice on one foot and occasionally giving a postman's knock on it with the other. In a good long slide, there was something in the motion which Mr. Pickwick, who was very cold and standing still, could not help envying. "It looks like a nice warm exercise, doesn't it?" he inquired with Wardle. When the gentleman was thoroughly out of breath by reason of the indefatigable manner in which he had converted his legs into a pair of compasses and drawn complicated problems on the ice. "Ah, it does indeed," replied Wardle. "Do you slide?" "I used to do so on the gutters when I was a boy," replied Mr. Pickwick. "Try it now," said Mr. Wardle. "Oh, do, please, Mr. Pickwick," cried all the ladies. I should be very happy to afford you any amusement," replied Mr. Pickwick, "but I haven't done any such thing in 30 years. "Pooh, nonsense," said Wardle, dragging him off his skates with the impetuosity which characterized all his proceedings. "Here, I'll keep you company. Come along." And away went the good-tempered old fellow down the slide, with a rapidity which came very close upon Mr. Weller, and beat the fat boy all to nothing. Mr. Pickwick paused, considered, and pulled off his gloves, and put them back in his hat. 2 or 3 short runs, bulked himself as often, and at that took another last turn, and went slowly and gravely down the slide, with his feet about 1.25 yards apart, amidst the gratified shouts of all the spectators. "Keep the pot a-billin', sir," said Sam, and went down Wardle again, and then Mr. Pickwick, and then Sam, and then Mr. Winkle, and then Mr. Bob Sawyer, and then the fat boy, and then Mr. Snodgrass, followed closely upon each other's heels, and running after each other with as much eagerness as if their future prospects in life depended on their expedition. It was the most intensely interesting thing to observe the manner in which Mr. Pickwick performed his share in the ceremony, to watch the torture of anxiety which he viewed the person behind, gaining upon him at the imminent hazard of tripping him, to see him gradually expend the painful force he had to put ahead on first, and face towards the point from which he had started, to contemplate the playful smile which mantled on his face, and the